What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Peter and Paul podcast. And from what you guys can see in this title, you're probably wondering what is Paul talking about? He's just starting his 20s and now he wants to talk about like different versions of friendships from different timelines of your life. But yeah, welcome back to the channel. And yeah, it is a lovely, cozy Wednesday evening here in Melbourne. And actually, was just wondering earlier today and thinking what type of podcast, type of content that I want to put out tonight. And I've realized I've thought about a lot about friendships in our 20s and just the maintenance of it, just how to sustain it, how to even make friends, how to raise the proper boundaries in terms of maintaining these types of friendships. So yeah, if you guys wanted to listen, learn something from me, maybe a thing or two, just sit back, relax, and let's do the talking. So I've actually listed that here on my laptop, just some key points that I wanted to share in regards to today's topic, which is friendship in our 20s. So yeah, let's talk about friendships. It's really funny that no one really prepares you for how different your 20s or like how different it gets in terms of like your friendship in your 20s, that when you're younger, friendship just happens. You hang out, you laugh with the same people, you exist in the same place every day, and just like that, you're suddenly close. And at that time, you just don't really think about it because the foundation of the friendship at that time is proximity. And just by having that, you're already assured for life for, having that friend. But when you're in your 20s, things start to shift. People, they get jobs, they move to cities, they, fall in love, they heal, they evolve, they chase new goals. And before you even realize it, the people who once felt permanent to you start to fade into distance. And, it's not really dramatic or there's no big fallout, there's no huge argument, but, sometimes it's the quietness that occurs that kind of puts that distance in between two people for them to realize and figure out who they really are and what their stance in life. And from there, that's where the friendship it is tested. And yeah, when that stuff happens, what is our first instinct? Like if you really care deeply, you'll start to question yourself. You'll start to wonder, did I do something wrong? Are we still close? Did I change or have they changed? And yeah, that's when you start to realize how emotional friendships can actually be. You start to overthink or checking if maybe, if I'm the problem, if you're the problem. And you start to replay these old moments in your head, noticing like the slower replies, noticing how the conversation aren't as long as anymore. And yeah, that's just when it hits. This quiet feeling that something's shifting. I feel like that is really scary, especially for us people who are in our 20s, when we kind of deal and see this sudden change and shift with the people that we are close to, the people that we grew up with, and just the people that we value before. I mean, we still value now, but people that were kind of the sole core to who we are as a person. But yeah, um, honestly, that feeling before when I was starting to feel that, it kind of felt personal to me. I used to take it personally and I'd always panic. I'd force conversations. I'll text more, I'll try to keep the same energy. But at the end of the day, and from my realizations now, I've learned that closeness isn't about how often you talk. It is about how real it still feels when you guys talk. Because being in our 20s, friendship starts to test our understanding of, understanding of love, of space and even timing. That sometimes people drift not because of something bad has happened, but because they're just growing. They're entering new seasons of their lives, facing new responsibilities, or just figuring out themselves. And that doesn't mean, or that doesn't make them as a bad friend. It just means that they're human. I used to think that friendship meant like constant connection. That if we were close, we'd always talk. Always hang out, always be the same. And I used to be really possessive with people that I felt the need to put the extra effort. I mean, I don't really regret doing that, but more so, I regret how I acted before in terms of keeping the friendship. I always initiated like doing, the hangouts for us to still be friends, and for me to feel like we're still friends, because I didn't want that spark, that the spark of that friendship in us to fade because of the facts of life. I've realized that people evolve, and so do dynamics. I actually had a one friend that I was super close to, like everyday talk close. We shared everything else, our goals in life, our frustrations, random thoughts at 2 a.m.s. And then one day life just happens. Like life just got in the way. There's no argument, there's no reason, just the distance. And I remember how that felt. Did feel hurt because I feel like I was that person kind of put in a distance where I had to find myself and to, analyze what happiness is to me, because at that time there was some personal stuff that's going on, and I kind of had to value and weigh, my plate, and kind of realigned what happiness is to me. And that sort of kind of affected that aspect in friendship, because yeah, just like what I've mentioned to you guys, I used to be the one who always makes the effort, who initiates. And I felt really not tired, but more so I became more self-aware of that. And I started to realize that not every friendship is supposed to last forever. And I don't mean that in a negative way. That it just means that some people are meant to teach you something and shapes your character, and like be there in that specific chapter in your life, and then move on. And that's totally okay. And yeah, that's totally okay. It doesn't make it less meaningful. It just means that, that specific chapter in our lives served its purpose. You don't lose people, you just stop holding them when they no longer belong. And I feel like that mindset changed how I see everything, because when you stop forcing people to stay, you start appreciating them for who they are and not resenting them for leaving. And I feel like that's what maturity is. It's learning to care without clinging, to love without expecting, and also to let go without bitterness. And this is where I want to bring up something that Emma Watson did say when she was talking to Jay Shetty. It was that podcast episode. She said, the truth about kindness is that it's brutal, and kindness without truth is manipulation. When I heard that, it did really hit me, because friendships, we often confuse kindness with comfort. We avoid hard conversations because we don't want to hurt people, or we don't want to seem too confrontational. But what Emma said in that podcast episode, and what she explained, was something deeper. It was that when we say we want to share or reveal the truth, we don't mean by walking around being awful to people, or being really mean or blunt in terms of like sharing our opinions, but it is about telling the microscopic truths, the small, honest things that might be uncomfortable but real about us and to that person. And yeah, being willing to have that tolerance for those conversations is really important to kind of sustain the friendship and also to put ourselves on a better place where we are fitting to become a better person for our friend. And at the end of the day, that's where the real connection looks like. Two people willing to sit in the truth, even in even when it stings a little. Because yeah, at the end of the day, that's where growth happens. That's where friendship stops being surface level and it starts being real. On top of that, being kind doesn't mean being quiet. It means being honest but gentle. It's about having enough respect for someone to tell them the truth even when it's uncomfortable, because truth without kindness can be cruel, but kindness without truth, that that is not love, that's fear. And I look back and and I look back now and try to observe and analyze how I've handled friendships before, and then see it clearly. I used to avoid the truth. I'd rather, overextend myself than admit when something felt off. I'd rather pretend everything was fine than be honest about growing apart. But the truth is, honesty doesn't ruin friendship, pretending does. When you start to be real and you stop needing everything to, last forever, you start allowing people to choose you freely, not out of guilt, not out of like obligation. And that's when we find our peace. Because real friendship doesn't demand, it understands. It doesn't hold tight, it holds right. The thing about friendship in our 20s is that they mirror your personal growth. They show you how you handle loss, your boundaries, and patience, and they test your ability to let go gracefully and in a perfect timing, and also to trust the timing. Because sometimes someone's absence isn't rejection, it's about redirection. And when you stop drifting as betrayal and start seeing it as part of life's rhythm, you stop carrying that resentment. You can love someone from a distance. You can root for them quietly. You can wish them peace without needing to be part of their story anymore. And yeah, that's what real emotional maturity is, what it looks like. And you'll start to notice that the older you get, the smaller your circle becomes. I used to question that and, judge like older people regards to just having a smaller circle of friends because I used to question how their dynamics were, that like probably they lacked somewhere, or they they lacked as a friend at the time. That's why they're not friends anymore with other people. But now I start to get why it happens, because life just happens. And just by having that sort of understanding, you'll stop chasing quantity and start valuing quality. You start to realize that you don't need to be everywhere or with everyone, because because peace feels better than presence. And that sort of is what the true core of friendship in our 20s is like, that learning not every silence is rejection and not every distant means disconnection. But when you do find those friends who grow with you, who respects your space, who understands your silence, who celebrate you quietly, keep them close. Those are your real ones. The ones who you don't talk for months but can call at 2 a.m. and it's like no time has passed. The ones who don't guilt you for changing because they're changing too, those are gold. Cherish them, but don't cage them. Because I do believe that real friendship doesn't need chains, it needs trust. So if you're listening to this right now and thinking about a specific person you drifted from, maybe, send that text. Not to fix anything, but to say, hey, I was just thinking about you. And if they don't reply, that's totally okay. You showed love, and that's enough. Because closure doesn't always come through conversation, sometimes it comes through acceptance. Friendship in our 20s will test our patience, definitely, our ego, our emotional maturity. It'll also teach us what love looks like when it's not romantic. And it'll definitely show us the beauty in letting go without bitterness, and in staying loyal even when, life pulls us into different places, different scenarios and situations. And because yeah, life do pulls people apart, and it kind of puts a toll and takes a toll on everyone's relationships, even our friendships. Because the truth is, you don't have to hold on to people to prove they matter. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is to let things evolve naturally. So yeah, hold your people close, but not tight. You We should, love them hard, but let them breathe. And trust that what's meant for you will stay, because at the end of the day, yeah, you don't lose real friends. You just stop chasing the wrong ones. And that's something I'm learning every single day.